Bureau Chief. Sorry. I'm the Deputy Bureau Chief in the Bureau of Community Planning and Growth at Department of Economic Opportunity.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so we have a few things to do on our agenda. It's not as packed of an agenda as we've had in the past. I think that will be kind of a trend since we're meeting every other month, so we'll be able to check some stuff off as we go rather than packing it all into one. So in theory, these meetings should be getting shorter. But I will keep them at 2 hours for scheduling purposes, just to allow us for discussion time if we need it. Overarching today, we will be looking at our draft prioritized actions. So we're getting down into the details of things. The committees have been working really hard to get everything to you as soon as possible. They even had some additional emails going through this month to be able to get you guys finalized things, or quote unquote finalized things. I'm also going to give you a little bit of a funding outlook to kind of talk about the next round of funding and where we need to be looking for funding. And then if there will be updates across the board for the committees as well as the program and other business that we have to address. Anything to add to the agenda before we get started? Okay, before we super dive into everything, I kind of wanted to set the stage for how these every other month meetings are running. So we have the STEM committee that meets every fourth Thursday for 2 hours. Then we have the CAC that is meeting every second Thursday for 2 hours. And then the Development and Finance Committee that meets every second Monday for 1 hour. So those every month are meetings that are between 1 and 2 hours. Then every 2 months we have the Management Council meeting. So they just met on February 10th, following a few of the committee meetings to review a lot of what you're reviewing today. They give feedback back, and then the policy board will meet. Our meeting, I think, is every fourth Wednesday of every month, with a few exceptions because they fell on weird holidays or something like that. And so as you can see, we have the Management Council meeting, and we really don't have a lot of time to get things back to committees before you guys see things. So sometimes we have to add in additional meetings. The STEM added an additional meeting in. We had some additional emails going through, which is why you're getting materials 1 or 2 days before our meeting. It's not because I'm not doing stuff. It's because all of this is very fresh off the print. So we will this is kind of the nature of this year, is going to be to just push. A lot of what you're seeing will be draft. You're moving it forward so that the public can see it, and then the committees can respond to what you are giving us feedback. Any questions on that? Eventually, we will be not known as the group that meets. So this is just really to get the CCMP done. After that, I expect many of these committees will start meeting. Meetings forever. All right. So last time, just to recap, we looked at desired outcomes, goals, and we talked a little bit about actions and how to prioritize. So you all kind of approved and we looked at priority issues. So you all looked at a few things that came from the Management Council, but because the committees didn't have a chance to review, you kind of said, let's not comment a whole lot on it yet. One of those things was the priority issues. And so the Management Council had some additions. The committees have now looked at this, and this is the final 8 lists. These are not in any order. They haven't changed from the last time you saw them, but the Management Council has finally been able to say, yes, we're good, and the committees are, yes, we're good. Comments, reactions?
we talked about, these top topics,
Right,
a lot of things fell underneath them,
right.
and so these were the main
The
topics.
broad, yeah. These are sort of, I call these watershed concerns.
Mhm.
So they're very broad scale. Everything that we do should address one or more of these issues or these concerns. So, you reviewed draft of the priority issues, the management council said, yes, we're good to go, we're moving forward with these. Then, the management council asked for the community action committee to add in a public access in goal 3 under our outreach and education or stewardship goal. We'll review the specific language. The CAC hadn't had a chance to look at that before you guys saw it, and so that went back to them. They created specific language. I'll address that when we get further into everything. But the management council did accept that language that came from the CAC for final approval. And then the last one was that the management council wanted to change our outreach and education focus area to stewardship and access. The CAC actually came back with, let's just keep it to stewardship. Access will be addressed at the goal level. The management council accepted that, and now it's for your. We can address that as we get a little bit further into the details of things, but that's where we're at, yeah. Okay.
I think you'll see when she goes into more detail,
Yeah.
especially on stewardship, why it makes sense, and how they re-refer. Makes sense when you get to those details.
Remind me to go back. Thank you. Okay. So now we'll move into committee updates. STEM committee update, that is Ryan.
Right, I'll just, have you. So, well, John is here to highlight some work that's going on in Gulf County. I wanted to use some of my time to highlight just some of the existing ongoing projects that are happening in both of our bays. So this is a really awesome project to look at seagrass recovery. He and his team have done a huge amount of work to map trap scars and then restore them. Almost 44,000 sediment tubes restored into prop scars, and they've been monitoring them ever since. So it's a really awesome effort.
Did you say 44,000?
Yes.
44,000.
And that's not even in all of it, it barely
Kept us busy
covers
in
all of them.
2020. Saved us during the pandemic. I was able to pay people, and we were able to treat a lot of prop scars when there weren't a lot of people out there, so we were able to get
And that
things.
was just in St. Joe Bay?
The goal of the project was to restore two linear acres of prop scars, so not like 2 acres like a square. So you can see all those red lines are scars, and we had 11 different sections. We also mapped St. Andrews in the Aquatic Preserve, and we mapped Alligator Harbor Aquatic Preserve, just because we know there's a lot of seagrass there, it's shallow. We met the 2-acre goal in St. Joe, so we didn't need to expand, but we have restoration plans ready to go, excuse me, for St. Andrews Aquatic Preserve, which includes like St. Andrews Bay proper, a little bit of Grand Lagoon, and then all of Shell Island Sound pretty much. And we have it for Alligator Harbor as well. We know we don't really need to do it in Alligator Harbor, but we literally have a restoration plan set to where in 2024, we've started working with the estuary program, CN Shoreline, and the CCA. They're going to be doing some seagrass planting at no cost to the state. So we are going to start our plan to restore all over St. Andrews, but use our restoration plan as a starting off point. We've got a year to figure that out. In St. Joe right now, ERI, Ecosphere Restoration Institute, and Aquatech, the other big seagrass restoration company in the state, they are under contract with the state of Florida to plant 100 acres of seagrass in the next 2 years at no cost to the state. So in about a month and a half to 2 months, they're coming into St. Joe as corrective action on the scars where we know the bags, the tubes didn't work. We're going to go back in and plant those areas with as many plants as they can. So 4,800 plants equals 1 acre. So if they put in 4,800 plants and various scars and things like that, we help them meet their goal. It's free to us, and it's helping us meet our restoration goals.
And are they growing those down in Tampa area?
Yeah, it's south of Tampa. That's the Sea and Shoreline facility. I think Aquatech's down there south of Tampa too. That's
Bo is one of those, and
Bo is Aquatech, and then Carter is Sea and Shoreline,
Okay.
correct. So, but we've seen some good response. If you're familiar with St. Joe, the Fresno's area and along the eastern shoreline, and actually close to Black's Island, where it's a little sandier and firmer, we've seen some good response in the bag, some good new growth. It's hard to see, but in the upper right picture, there's all sorts of little shoots in the middle of the scar. So fresh, bright green grass coming up. Some of the areas in the southern end of the bay where it's softer, the bags have sunk, and so we weren't able to maintain that ambient grade, so we've seen some failure there. And then, of course, the sea urchins have ravaged a huge portion of the areas we treated in 2020, and that's going to be a lot of the focus area of this no cost to the state planting, is they could literally just identify a huge polygon and fill it, and we'll have, it might be the bottom or the top polygon there, but anyway, there's a huge area that was grass and it's completely sand now, so we have so many scars crisscrossing there that if they plant rows, it'll like match our scars. We go back and monitor every scar, so we're really kind of hoping that it saves about 25% of our scars we treated.
One last question, sorry.
No,
I mean,
a lot of this is just recently published in the fall, so
Yeah.
it's sort of new information.
Yeah.
So if sea urchins were a significant problem last time, is there an intervention that's been?
So we've done sea urchin roundups with the public to try to relocate urchins out of the grass beds where they're feeding. For some reason, they just have an unlimited food source. There's no real predators. They're actually seeing it now in the Steenhatchee and Deacle Beach area as well. Our partners at FWC just went down there to film some stuff, and but it's a problem to where they've just been able to reproduce, and they just eat the seagrass. They mow it down, and it's just a marching front. We've developed some different techniques to have an urchin roundup again this year, using some, push nets instead of manually collecting. And we're gonna try to work with some of the local eco-tour operators too, to get some people out there. We try to do it during scallop season, so if you're out there hunting for treasure, you might as well get some urchins and help us relocate them. The thought there is we're not killing anything, and we're taking it out of the grass, so hopefully it finds another food source, or it's just too far for it to really walk all the way back there and it just dies. Typically, these fronts only last a year or two, but this one has persisted basically since Hurricane Michael. Like, the bay got turned inside out, and there's just been this bloom, and it's persisted. When I worked in the Big Bend, we saw it in St. Mark's and Steenhatchee, but it was only for a year or two. This is just, it's been incessant. Like, we've seen the urchin population decrease in St. Andrews Bay, but it's just blown up, and they just love the southern end of the bay right now. They just mow it down.
What's the average depth of St. Joe Bay?
Where there's seagrass, about 7 feet's the deepest, and so, but it's like 30 feet out in the middle where it's deep. So the seagrass edge, I mean, typically a lot of the areas where most of the seagrass damage is between 1.5 feet and say 5 feet, depending on the tide. So, I mean, there was a lot of scar damage there. Already it's the prime scalloping area. The summer we were putting the bags in, it was right after they had done all the bay sitter or the scallop sitter program, so there were scallops everywhere. So it was impossible not to sample the bay while we were restoring the bay, but all of that is just gone. It's incredible. Like, you go out there and you just see little black dots all over the place, and no grass. It's just gone. I don't know if
Your roundup has what, like 5,000 collected each roundup?
Yeah, so far in 4 roundups, we've moved about 43 urchins away, but that wouldn't even fill this room.
No.
And, there's a thought in the Port St. Joe area that the sea turtles are causing a lot of damage. We all know sea turtles eat grass, but it's not really true that the turtles are doing the damage. There's like 1,000 turtles probably would not fit in this room. 1,000 urchins wouldn't even fill like a quarter of this table. Like, there's that many out there. And when you just see it, and so we don't want to kill anything. There's no natural predators. They don't really have any like nutritional value for anything to be eating them, so we don't really know what to do. A lot of times you just have to wait for it to fizzle out. It's like a bad red tide that won't go away.
Is there any research going on to?
So there are a lot of people that have been contacting us about doing some sort of urchin research. We've read some stuff, and we share this information a lot with people that there's been some research done in Florida Bay that showed that speckled sea trout, juvenile speckled sea trout, which spend time in seagrass, tend to selectively feed on sea urchin larvae when they release it into the water. So there's a direct linkage, I guess, if you're seeing more urchins and less sea trout, if they can draw that conclusion. I don't know what the fishery level is like of sea trout in St. Joe Bay, but that would be somewhere to go to talk to FWC about if they're doing
And then
trawling.
the public says it's declined.
Right, and so, yeah, like, that's what I've heard too, but I don't have any numbers to back that up, but, so that makes sense though in the natural world. If you take away a predator, the thing can thrive, and unfortunately, the crazy thing is though, is the urchins need that habitat to live in. Like, they're photosensitive, they cover themselves with grass and shells, but then they just eat it. Yeah, and so they're just making their way deeper and deeper and deeper into the south end of the bay.
Are the fish that you just mentioned, I already forgot.
Trout.
Is that one of the things that FWC can,
Yeah.
they
have data.
Mhm.
Nina just presented some of the data at a meeting that we went to with the civil system. I can't remember what it is.
well, I mean, can they produce them in the hatcheries?
The Duke Energy Mariculture Center down in Crystal River, they grow redfish and sea trout to restock populations.
So is that a potential then to try to get?
It is. So, it's just, it's one of those things to where, we're not sure if the population is down, but it sounds like it is, or that's the rumor, but the rumor was too that the sea turtles were eating the grass, and we actually have data. There is some good news too. Our counterparts at FWC, our seagrass partners and urchin roundup partners, they've been collecting data across these areas that have been ravaged. So they've done these huge transects, they've tried exclusion cages, but they're also monitoring the zones that we've done the roundups at. So whatever areas they've marked off, they've gone back, and there has been some positive regrowth in some of these areas. So it is working, but there's just so many. They talk about using roller frame trawls off shrimp boats, but you worry about bycatch and damaging the seagrass. It's not bad, but there's still some things to work out on the feasibility of that. But for now, there's 3 or 4 different sizes out there, so they're regenerating.
We were out there for 2 or 3 hours, and I think I collected 2,000 myself. I'm not that great.
Some of the new push nets we have, we tried them out in a polar bear roundup last month. We went out in the water and did it with FWC, and the scallop restoration team came out as well using these. They're just the PVC with a net in it. It's just like a big shovel or snow shovel almost. It goes right over the grass. We filled up 10 buckets in about 20, 30 minutes. Each bucket can hold about 250 urchins. So we rounded up, 12,000 urchins, 20,000, that day, just, like, I think overall they sent me something like that, some sort of number like that, in just a short amount of time. So we've got some new techniques. We want to try to get some kayakers and land-based people involved, but that involves more check-in stations, more liability. Right now, we have 1 check-in point. You have to bring your own boat. You have to have your own snorkel gear. So we're trying to put more people involved, see if we can get some land access, but for right now, that's where we're at. There's a lot of communication, because down in the Keys, they're trying to restore the diadema, which they need to eat on the corals, to clean the corals. These urchins exist down there in Florida Bay, but they're not a problem. So there's one group that's trying to have more urchins, another group that's trying to just reduce our urchins. They're supposed to be there. They're a native species. It's just we have way too many, and
So we just need a big cat hole.
that's right. We just need to send them somewhere else. That's all we need to do.
Is there a certain type of urchin that's the bigger problem, or is it all the urchins?
Well, so in Florida, it's just the 2 species, at least that I know of, is the Lictichinus, which is the one that's our problem. It's only about that big. The one that's down in the
Is that the white one, or?
It's white, red, pink.
Gotcha.
It's actually called the green variegated urchin. Some of the new ones we're seeing are actually green in color, but for the most part, they're all the same species. They're just red, white.
Gotcha.
But there's a couple other species we have here too, but this variegated one is the biggest problem, right now. the lack of them is a problem in the Keys, or the lack of the other species, the diadema, that's the black one that looks, you know,
That's
smaller
one I
body, a
run
lot
through all
longer
the time.
spine. Yeah, that one is actually good because it cleans the coral, otherwise the algae overgrows the coral and the coral dies.
So what are the procedures that you guys are using to replant the grass?
So this is gonna be, manual planting. The Aquatech team, they have a nursery, down south where they've been growing every species of marine seagrass and freshwater seagrass for all, types of projects. Our project focuses on turtle grass, and so they're gonna go out there with plugs, and they're gonna do whatever spacing that, we plan. We have coordinates for every single scar, so the goal is to plant, you know, close to our scars as much as possible to fill in those areas. They're the experts really in that kind of planting, but there won't be any more sediment tubes. Our permit's expired for putting fill in, but we can do corrective planting. So,
What is the sediment tube?
it is a big cotton sock. It's about 3 feet long and about 8 inches wide. And you fill it with sand, and the goal is, in the prop scar, a propeller goes through and it removes the roots and the blades and everything, and it creates a valley. So the grass is there, and then you have the cup. So the goal is to put the bag in to bring it up to the same level, the ambient grade, so the grass naturally revegetates. If you're too low, it won't work. If you're too high, it won't work. So it's real finicky. You fill it with sand that's a native grain size, so there's lots of sediment analysis ahead of time. The bags are biodegradable. They break down in about 4 to 6 months. The goal is to get that ambient grade and to really have it match. And it's a tricky thing, because sometimes you think it's only gonna sink a little bit, it sinks a lot, or you think it's gonna sink and it doesn't. But yeah, it's a pretty common practice. A lot of people are trying to get away from it because it is so tricky, but it's just been used forever and it's worked in a bunch of places.
Just snorkelers, or they doing scuba diving?
So we do it all with mask and snorkel, or the projects I've been involved with in the Big Bend end up here. Down in the Keys, they probably have to use some scuba in some of the deeper areas. We get clear water, deeper, plants and things like that. For the planting, depending on the depth of the water that's coming up, that's gonna be on their team's decision if they need scuba and stuff. Most of the time though, it's not used. It's just mask and snorkel, and they kind of have a floating thing, and they just kind of go along and plant. Sort of like you do on the shoreline, but it's sort of up to their team to figure out the best way to approach, because I think there's gonna be some areas that we'll have to avoid because of water depth, or scuba would probably be required.
I would think though, with the water depth, there wouldn't be prop scars if it's deep enough.
Right. Well, so in the wintertime, you know, you get a lot more of the negative tides, and so there are some areas in the summertime, I know I can fly right through, but in the wintertime,
Yeah.
if it's low that day, I'm not gonna make it even with the jack plate all the way up. So,
You could also have, anchor scars too, like people
Mhm.
driving.
yeah, and you also get giant boats, like with triple outboards going into like 4 feet of water, where you know their draft is pretty close, and just trying to take off, they might, you know, cause a blowout, which leads
Yeah.
to scouring and things like that. A lot of the effort, we did have a shallow seagrass buoy system in the south end of the bay for a few years, Hurricane Michael, and a lot of careless boaters. It was just getting too expensive to maintain, all the poles were getting bent and damaged. The big thing is gonna be boater education, and that's gonna be working with this group and other groups too. We've been trying to get, new signage out at boat ramps. We put a bunch out at St. Andrews State Park, St. Joe State Park, Frank Pate, a bunch of other ramps in Franklin County. I just got a bunch of new seagrass signs in. I'm gonna be, putting up around North and West Bay coming up soon. And then it's to try to, you know, do some focused outreach marches with Seagrass Awareness Month. And, you know, I know there's a lot of talk about what we could do with some local eco tour operators, or some new AI technology that's coming out, and some things. So there's some new ideas that just, you know, we need to follow through on. But the big thing is gonna be boater education. And a lot of that comes down to boat renters. Unfortunately, it's not nice to point a finger, but they are, a lot of the problem is they just send people out without knowledge or any guidance, and they follow with local people around, and some of us know where to go and where you don't go, and, or what boat can do it and what boat can't do it, so.
On that note, is there efforts to do outreach to the boat rental places to bring in?
Yeah, there's, there's been a lot of good ideas talked about. There's been a lot of good things, tried in the future, all around the state, all the aquatic preserves, especially on the Gulf Coast and down south deal with this, prop scarring and boater education. So it really is just trying to, technology has changed so much, so there's a lot of good opportunities to figure something out.
All right, let's get.
Yeah, sorry, because I could talk about this all day, I know.
Yeah. On that note, we do have a flyer over there because we have started sort of a seagrass campaign. So there are copies that we can pass around, but I just want to go to keep us moving through.
Well, if you quit asking so many questions.
On that. All right, Ryan, one more slide.
This will be quick. So another project that's going on in St. Andrew Bay is, filling some oyster data gaps. So a group from FWRI has been going out and kind of mapping existing or historic oyster reefs, checking them to see if there are live oysters there. A report on this is forthcoming. It should come out in a couple of weeks, but I haven't seen it yet. But they shared some data with me, and right now, with the reef that they visited in our bay, there were no oysters over 75 millimeters, which are like harvestable oysters. So we didn't find any live, basically adult oysters on any of the reefs that we visited, and they visited a lot. So that project is kicking off. That was one step of it, and now they're going out and they're monitoring sort of sedimentation, and then they'll be monitoring spat, which is just recruitment of juvenile oysters. And so the goal is to be able to eventually build a habitat suitability model for oysters, and that will help us better manage restoration of oysters here. So really great work, and we're happy to help them with everything that they do. That's all I have.
Is there a certain depth that these oysters thrive at?
It all depends. I mean, my group does a lot of the Nerda oyster restoration in East, North, and West Bays. Davis's group here, they actually sample on our reefs too, and we do the mapping on our reefs so they don't have to. So we've been giving them a lot of data. It all depends. In Appalach, subtidal oysters grow in, say, 3 to 6 feet of water. Over here, it's 4 to 8 feet of water. And then in Pensacola, it's as deep as 12. It all depends on the water quality and, all sorts of different factors where oysters thrive, the culture material, the bottom material, or freshwater inputs and things like that, to where if they can, live and thrive, it all varies. Sure.
And then on to the Community Action Committee update, and that is Brittany.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on Community Action Committee. Sorry that I cannot be there. But we just met, we did our 7th meeting a couple weeks ago. So we haven't had quite as many meetings as STEM has, but we're rolling, and we went through the prioritization process and trying to identify those actions, and we've got set goals, which you'll see in just a minute. But over the last few months, I've met with several different community stakeholders, different organizations, touching base with Lake Powell Community Alliance, Friends Group, Camp Helen State Park, just meeting different people, trying to connect to people that are doing great work in our bay system. Let's see. The slide that you're seeing now, I just wanted to point out a couple different outreach things that we've done. In January, Jessica and I had the opportunity to do a short segment with Chasing the Sun Fishing Show. They had a locals day that they did, and we were able to have a short little blurb about what is an estuary and why it's important. That was fun. Here in the other pictures is a winter bay day at the St. Joe Buffer Preserve, which John and his crew was also there. There was a lot of great environmental organizations. They had a really great turnout at that event. And we were able to start sharing some information about our seagrass campaign as well, which I'll talk about in a second. The upcoming events the Save the Bay that already happened this past weekend was to support St. Andrew's Baywatch. And then if you can click one more time. We're going to be at the Emerald Coast Boat and Lifestyle Show, which is March. It's the 3rd through the 5th, but we are going to have a table set up there the 4th and 5th, which is the Saturday and Sunday, to try to, we'll have a captive boater audience, which is really great, as John just described to you about the prop scar issues in our base. And then, like John said too, March is Seagrass Awareness Month. So I've been working trying to come up with our social media campaign to do different graphics to just raise awareness of all the different functions of seagrass and different how to identify them and all the great things that come from a healthy seagrass ecosystem. So if you have, any of you guys have photos or articles or ideas or anything to incorporate, we've already got a pretty good set of information that we'll hope to be sharing out. But for sure, if you guys have anything you'd like us to share, please send it my way as well. Trying to think if there's anything else, Jessica, that I missed. Oh, the only other thing is just we've been working with St. Andrew's Baywatch and Gulf Coast State College to do the citizen science lecture series. They do them once a month, and we've been trying to get identifying speakers and promoting the events in the community as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Brittany? All right, so then on to the Development and Finance Committee update. I have a pretty picture for this. So I wanted to, this committee's still forming. We've had 3 meetings, but I wanted to kind of put out the roles. So really, this committee was envisioned to develop partnerships for investing into the estuary program to help us with the long-term conservation sustainable funding, as well as look at projects and grants to get things more implementable funded. We have a small group, it's about 5 people. We've got 3 municipalities represented with their grant folks on there, and then FSU with Foundation, and then one other citizen who's still figuring out if he wants to engage fully. So it was envisioned to be this more development side of things. I'm not sure it's going to necessarily be that, but this will be a really great group to start getting projects implemented and grants written for those projects. And so one of the first things that I did was put together a draft list of grant opportunities for them to be able to access and look through. It will be, I have to finish it still, and then it'll be filterable. So that's one thing they asked for, is to make sure it was filterable based on the type of projects these opportunities will fund. So if it's land acquisition, flooding, stormwater, wastewater, those types of topics, that these ones will allow you to fund. So I'm still working on that. It lives on our publicly accessible SharePoint site, so it's accessible, people beyond just the committee, but it is still in draft mode. And then we last time looked at filling in some of the, we'll get to the action plans in a second, but some of the action plan information is who are we going to work with, who's going to be the lead, and where the money is going to come from. And so we kind of started looking at different activities that have been prioritized and actions to talk about what's currently going on in their municipalities. I think we realized that in order to get a really robust discussion going, I have to send out these requests so they can shop it around to other staff, because they may not know everything that's going on. And so that's something I need to work into my work plan. But then we are working on projects for sort of a wish list of like their priority areas and projects, so that I have that in the back of my mind when things come across my email for funding opportunities. So It's going well. They come every time. They come in person. They give great feedback. It's just, we're still figuring out how to really get that unrestricted, non-grant funds, figured out, so. Any questions on this, Eddie? You know of
Do you use
people?
local grant writers like,
McKaylee
Yeah,
is on
McKaylee,
it, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, she comes all the time.
All right.
And she's great, because she's like, I just need to learn more. And so
Yeah,
Jennifer
she-
Aldridge is also on it, and then Tana City Beach, Michael just joined. And Jim is also there with Restore Contracting for Bay County, and so she's learning a lot with Jennifer, especially for the municipality side of things,
Right.
so. Okay, so next we will be talking about the meat of this meeting, the prioritized actions. I, of course, forgot to put page numbers in your packet again. I apologize. Let's go ahead and start on this page here. I think you all have it open. So we talked about the stewardship focus area, so that's gonna be your last one. Fourth focus area, so that one was previously titled Outreach and Education. Now it is stewardship, not stewardship and access, but just stewardship. And then you'll see that third goal is to increase recreational opportunities and access, so short and sweet. This is at the goal level. We are 2 levels below that. You guys are gonna be looking at the next level of detail in just a second. So there's more information of what that means underneath this, but that is the language that the CAC agreed on and the Management Council agreed on. Keep going. We're not gonna say yes or no yet. So, as a reminder, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get to this action plan level. So we talked about priority issues, we talked about desired outcomes last time. You just looked at that page that you're on now is the goals. And then today we're gonna be looking at that brown box, well, the light brown box, the actions. So those actions are specific actions that will have activities underneath them that will be completed to meet that goal. Eventually, we will get to these action plans, and that's where all those details will be. As provided, today we're gonna be looking at both of those brown boxes, but you're really only approving the light brown box today. The dark brown box information is just to give you context. So, I like to just, we've come a long way. I've been here about 1.5 years. We have checked off priority issues, desired outcomes, and goals. We are almost to the end, because we'll be looking at the actions and a little bit of activities, so we're getting there. It may seem slow.
You're also looking at the actions because you want to present those to your public works.
Right.
That's the level at which the public.
So we have public workshops scheduled in March. Obviously, what is presented to them will be pending your approval today. But that's the goal, is to get approval feedback and then roll it out to the public for their reactions. Okay. And then I just wanted to kind of give you a reminder of who's creating all of this stuff. So the STEM committee works on the water and sediment quality and quantity, the natural resources and species conservation focus area, and resiliency. The community action committee, or the CAC, is the outreach and education, or now stewardship. So in order to get to what we are gonna talk about today, I wanted to just let you know what the process was, because there was a very robust, long process that the committees took to be able to get here. So the STEM committee identified kind of what mattered when considering different things. So they decided on, does it have a critical impact to the bay? Is it feasible in a 10-year timeline? Is there buy-in, or is there potential to get buy-in in the next 10 years to get things started? And then a return on investment. Are we gonna see a return on investment or the beginnings of return on investment in the first 10 years? And then they told us which one of these was most important, and they ranked the order, and that's where the percent or the number of points comes into play. So critical impact being the highest with 40 points, feasibility at 30 points, and buy-in at 20, and then return on investment at 10.
They have a method and, a system for prioritizing a very long list of potential actions.
Right, so this was their kind of grading schema that they took to score 85 different actions that have been brainstormed over the entire time the program's existed, basically. So we synthesized information from all of our public workshops, all of our online workshops, existing information from different plans, like the TNC watershed plan and swim plan. All of that went into their list, and then the STEM committee got homework to be able to rank. And so this was sort of, so they got their homework, they ranked, and then we came together to talk about it. And so this is just the process. The words don't matter. It's okay that you can't see them very well. It's really just, it's really just, they gave us feedback, but it's always good to have that discussion of understanding, what do these things mean? This is how I interpreted it. And then what we ended up with will be what you see today. But there was some that needed to be merged together, some that needed to be moved to a different focus area. So that all happened on a phone call, multiple phone calls,
So
actually.
very iterative series
Yes.
of phone calls.
Questions on that? So then Ryan took all of that. So this is an example of like resiliency goal 1. Those are all the actions that had 15 different actions, and they all got boiled into 2. And then one of them got moved over to stewardship. So based on the feedback from the STEM committee and lumping things together and building off of things, some of them are more detailed, needed to go to the next level. This is kind of the process that they took. Clear as mud? Okay. Now, you have your packet, the page after the one that we were on just now. You have a front page, which is just a summary of the actions. You're looking at the stuff that's in this white box. And then on the back of that page, if you have the one that I printed for you, you have the details. The bullets are the activity levels. That is just to give you context. It is not complete. It is not worded properly, probably. It's just to give you an idea of what that action means.
The group spent a lot of time trying to distinguish out what's an action and what's an activity. Well, here what you're seeing are the kinds of activities that support them. What is
We're gonna go focus area by focus area, and y'all can give me feedback on, I won't read them all out and do that. You guys can just kind of throw darts wherever it strikes you. And you can look at either side that makes you comfortable. If you like just the summary side, go with it. If you like the detail side, go with that. Those online, you can feel free to come on mute or raise your hand, we'll call on you. This is kind of a review and give feedback. If I don't hear anything for a few minutes, then I'll check in and we can move on.
you're asking to comment on any of the five?
Any of the 5 goals.
Any of the actions under any of the 5 goals,
yeah.
sorry.
Any of the actions.
Any of the
actions,
Is
yeah.
there one that you want more info on, or?
I see number 3 in goal 1. This is Barbara Powell. To convert septic to sewer based on environmental priorities. Any thoughts on prevention of new sewer or septic? Because that's something we're seeing in the Panhandle right now, is a lot of subdivisions, 200-300 houses getting sited away from available sewer systems. And we're starting to see a proliferation of septic in the counties.
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Dozier's gonna speak to that one.
Okay, so there's two avenues here, converting septic to sewer, and then, implementing sewer where growth areas are instead of septic. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
and so,
or even requiring developers that may not be in an area where there are sewers, that rather than developing on septic, maybe developing on a package plant, so the sewer infrastructure is there when the sewer reaches them years from now.
Yeah, a lot of that has been done, that is going on right now. Converting septic to sewer, Bay County is having conversations with, each of the cities, where we can, make that happen. I'll speak particularly to, St. Andrews area that
Right.
I'm more familiar with. We're having a conversation with Panama City on trying to implement the fact that, moving septic, people that are in old areas, moving them to sewer and allowing the residents to come onto their sewer system. So we're having those conversations, and we're doing that with each of the cities, actually. And then, that's moving septic to sewer. And then in new growth areas, what we have done is, say, as population moves north, we have, the density is held directly to, if you want density in a certain area for lots to be developed, you have to have paved roads and utilities in place. Sewer, if you're gonna do septic, you have much larger lots. And so that's one effort that's being made. And that's in a number of places up in the Sandhills right now, that anywhere there's a development going in place, we're doing that.
What's that density amount?
It varies depending on where it is.
Okay.
But I do know that, you know, that when you talk about the Sandhills, that's our recharge area for our drinking water. So we wanna make sure that area has several layers of protection on it. And so, the growth that's up there now, you know, they're up there, they're on sewer, they're on septic, I mean. So as that area develops and we see the population move to the north, there's requirements in place before they can get density. They have to have paved roads and sewer and water up there. Run, you know, in infrastructure instead of well and septic tank.
Right.
There's some efforts going on, just to let you know.
Okay.
And isn't there a rule that if sewer is run, can't replace the septic tank? Is that a DEP rule?
There's a rule by the state right now that if there's a sewer line run, in front of basically down your road in front of your house, and you have, accessibility to it, when it comes time to, if I understand this correctly, and I think I did, when it comes time to re-permit your septic tank, that you'll have to, the state will require you to tap onto that sewer and will not permit your septic tank. And just to address that again, the septic to sewer, what we are doing in Bay County is, we have areas identified, particularly right now around Deer Point Lake, that we are working real hard to put sewer in. The challenge is the money. We have grant money coming in, and we're matching that grant money, but our goal is to, we have different phases around the lake that we're gonna be implementing sewer, and, that's our most sensitive area. And then from there, we'll move out to other areas. That's, county on that. Developers, we're holding developers' feet to the fire as they develop areas to get the density they have to put in infrastructure.
So that could be something that we could add into the activity level. It says identify areas of current or future planned conversions, but we could expand that. It's on the bullets under number 3 on the detailed side. We could expand that to say something about the developers and preventing future septic creation. We don't prevent anything, but
Right,
something
right.
in those words.
The growth is gonna come, the way we can address it is to require, infrastructure to be in place before they are allowed to get to certain density, and, that will certainly.
Bill, if you, even if you have a sewer system, though, there's infiltration too, and problems with it, like, and releases of sewer into, you know,
Oh, yeah.
when we have large amounts of rain. And,
Yeah.
we have to, even if it is converting septic to sewer, we still need to maintain the sewers to where there's not an infiltration problem.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, yeah.
We're doing smoke testing right now in Lynn Haven. There's other forms of testing, but there, you know, we've had a release issue in the past and hoping to face it and correct it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of addressed in number 2 under goal 1 of identify and implement actions to reduce passages. That includes, like lift stations is in there, retrofits, anything that can help with that infrastructure side.
But you're right, it goes hand in hand. It's
Yeah.
not just one or the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Oh, I see lots of chats about,
Yeah.
hooking up to sewer when there's,
And one of the biggest, challenges there is throughout the whole county is in the oldest part of the county, which is Panama City. Panama City has a challenge, and they're addressing their challenge with their sewer that's falling apart on them. They have grant money, I don't recall how many millions of dollars they have grant money coming in, and they have contracts out already to address that problem, so they're working real hard to.
Yeah.
But it's such a large problem, it's gonna take so long, and you got a little bit of money, even though it's millions, it's a little bit when you look at the big problem of the overall city.
right.
So addressing the new growth in one way, but also addressing what's in place now, and addressing that in a way that, reaching out and getting grant money and replacing that infrastructure that's busting and running into our bays and polluting our bays.
Yeah.
We've had conversations with Keith about, the EPA has a grant program, with you, water infrastructure or something. But what they look for are like regional type projects, so like work you're doing to try to coordinate with the cities and see if there's regional solutions. The way that program works is you send a letter of intent to EPA, and then if they like the idea, then they will assign EPA, you've got an EPA person on here, right? I think, but they'll assign an EPA individual to work with you to develop that application. And it's kind of like a revolving loan type program, where it's a loan. So that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your head as a financing mechanism.
You've talked to me.
I've talked to Keith about that, yes.
So if he's aware of that, Keith is one of the spirit for us.
Yep.
And,
Then of course the state has water infrastructure in.
Barbara, if we add that into the detailed side of just kind of addressing some of that language, would that address your concern or your thought?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we weren't converting existing and ignoring the future.
Absolutely.
Any other actions, under that goal, or in
Comments
any of those
about the
goals?
actions?
These actions, these goals
Mm-hmm,
are at the foot level.
yes,
These goals are up here,
yes.
and then as we boil down, there's specific actions that need to be taken.
Right.
See that one back.
And then there's specific
Yeah.
actions, and then there are even more
These are the
specific
activities.
activities that help you understand what is included in that action.
Gotcha, that's
So
it.
he's like me, he's wanting to, yeah, 'cause I was like, well, I send the notes, and then I.
He sent me like
What's
a
the next
3-page
page?
email, which was great
And
information,
I
by the
reviewed
way.
it, so. But I sent Ryan a longer one.
And those, like I said, those bullets are not complete. I had to fit it into my fancy little schema. Yeah, they're just to give you context of what we're thinking with the wording of that action.
Illustrative, not comprehensive.
Yes, there you
Well, when you're referring to the lot sizes being larger for the homes that have to have the septic systems, but placing them for future growth to connect when utilities there, are they keeping the homes within 100 feet of the front of the road? Because you can't connect to sit to.
No, well, I was speaking of, say if there's a 100-acre area,
Mhm.
instead of having, if a developer comes in and they want to have, more density, put more homes in that, and they're up in the Sand Hills area,
Mhm.
in order, before they can get that more density, more homes, which would mean the lot sizes are smaller. And when I say smaller, instead of 10 acres, maybe they're 5 acres now, but, or less. They have to have the sewer in place, sewer, water, paved roads, the whole nine yards.
So they're not being required to build them at some point where water and sewer could reach them then? Okay.
They have to be there before they can build. The roads have to be paved, and the infrastructure has to be in before they can get their density, before they can, have the smaller lots and more homes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got to be in place.
But then if they build on the big lots and don't care, they're just gonna put septic in there, are they required to put the septic or in a way that could hook up to future sewer? Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
I'm sorry, is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Okay, that requirement is still governed by the state
Okay,
and state environmental, and so,
okay.
they have their requirements, and it would not, as far as I know, wherever, as long as they're away from the water, where they put their septic tank, they're not thinking of, hooking up to, the house would be, it's not the septic tank, it's the house that would be hooking up to the future.
Right.
And right now, there's legislation that I was told about in Tallahassee, I don't know if you heard about this. Yeah. Which I totally disagree with, I hope it fails, that is saying that your local government would be responsible for the utility up to the foundation of the house. Now, we're only responsible to the property owner.
Yeah.
And
Like the
say,
laterals they're talking about.
yeah, the laterals, so as the pipe comes out from underneath the house to feed and sewers running down the road, this legislation is stating that we would be responsible all the way up to where it enters into the house foundation, which is illegal.
That's not feasible.
Yes, that's public dollars going into paying private property,
Right.
and it's illegal, so I don't know how Tallahassee's gonna handle that, but I sure hope that they, don't move that forward.
Don't wanna
get in business.
No,
It's not feasible either, because
it's not,
you couldn't maintain that, because you can't control what they do across that property.
You can't, that's right, it's private property, so, anyway, I
Mhm.
don't get off track on that, but that's something that's, I know that they're talking about it over there, and,
So outside the density rules, then it gets governed by the state, basically?
that's right,
Yeah,
that's right.
okay. It's interesting because we had someone come out and look at our house, we were on the water, and they tried to put a new septic. I was like, no! You can't do that. The only reason they said no was because our well is in our backyard,
Right,
not because of the water. I'm like,
Well, you've got to be a certain distance from a body of water,
Yeah,
and then you have to be in potable water as well. So these distances all come into play whenever you're figuring where that septic tank is.
yeah. It was interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But to connect to municipal sewer, state rule is 100 feet. So
Yeah.
anything over that, they're not required to connect, even if it's there,
Okay,
because it won't flow properly.
Right.
okay.
So, but the only requirement will come in when there's sewer in front of their property, then, and they just won't give a permit to hook up.
Within 100 feet?
No.
See, that was what I was talking about. If your lots are really big and deep, and eventually there is sewer there, and they're 150 feet back,
Oh,
you
I see
still
what
can't
you're
make them do it.
Oh, you're talking about if they got,
And
if they're
that's
on 10
ongoing
acres, and they're
septic,
sitting in the
yeah.
back of the 10 acres?
That's
You still-
ongoing septic.
Yeah, that's
Huh.
that's interesting, that's,
Your house has to be within 100 feet of the
okay.
sewer line.
Sewer line, okay. Well, that's, I didn't realize that was a good point.
Yeah, I didn't know that rule.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that.
Okay. So any more comments on water and sediment quality and quantity? At either level, we can talk about the detail level too.
So we're gonna be voting on this?
You're voting on the high level. You are voting for it to move forward. You're not approving in final status.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're approving allowing these allowing staff to go to the public and say, here are proposed actions within this plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And again, you won't have a final kind of approval. You're gonna see this again, come back to you before
You're
you
gonna
see
be
the whole
sick of it.
plan together,
Gotcha.
before it's finalized, and you'll have that.
Okay,
So right now, you're just giving them permission to move forward with these, to take them to the public workshops. I guess so the question would be, any concerns with taking any of these actions
now, we've massaged
public
this.
comment?
Yeah, we have, as a group, I know through the months that we've been doing this, we've really worked on this and massaged it quite a bit.
Right.
The
committees have put a lot of time into this, but we have great committees that are kind of like the word, like the specific words, like whatever, it's really the intent of the actions.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I've got, as we move forward with this later on, I guess I've got different actions that I wanna see taking place,
Okay,
so I'll be addressing those later, I think.
okay,
Well, if you have recommendations, it'd be good to
yeah,
hear.
Implement now.
Yeah,
that
Well,
was it.
not at the 50,000 foot level, I mean, we get into identifying and implementing actions to reduce nutrients and pathogens into the water. It takes us over to, let's look at the actions on that. Identify, let's conduct pathogens, tracking. In here, we need to address, in action, would be capturing the runoff from our roads where possible.
That's in goal 4. Look at goal 4, sources of stormwater.
Stormwater, okay.
And then, yeah, ID locations, the stormwater outfalls that discharge and prioritize remediation.
There it is, okay.
Okay, implement suitable BMPs to reduce the quantity of pollution. Then develop priority stormwater projects for funding. And it includes kind of a mitigation, green infrastructure, and there's been a baby step legislation, to open the doors to mitigation.
Yeah, that addresses what I was saying.
some of these are gonna be linked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's all intertwined.
it's all
Correct.
intertwined, which
Yeah.
makes it so hard to review like this, but.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, which is why you kinda have to spend like a chunk of time and
You do.
and
Yeah.
go through it, 'cause
Yeah.
I had the same thing, it's like, oh, you need this, and then I got to the next goal, and, oh, well, there it is.
There it is, yeah, okay. Yeah, but that's so important that we do that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I think you brought up earlier with the I&I, it's just a huge, I think it was, and I'm trying to think, did y'all have, y'all had another, a similar issue with the rainfall that came in and having to release it, so.
Yeah.
Release,
Yeah, but that I&I is just retrofitting is the problem, you got these lines have been for so long.
Yeah, you're right. space, it's really tough. So looking ahead, as these, developments come,
Mhm.
and they have anywhere there's new runoff, would look at implementing, I mean, we can't implement it, but suggest that there's implementations of control before it goes into the bay, so you don't run a straight line into the bay. You have the option now to go ahead and build that sediment motion.
Right.
And clean that water up before it goes in there.
Yep.
And put in the base saver boxes. Yeah, are huge,
Yeah.
because even if you put in like a nature-based solution, you got a nice little stormwater wetland park there, like Cascades Park.
Mm-hmm.
If you put a base saver or vault, whatever type you want, on the front end of that, that takes most of the sediment out, the leaves, and all the garbage that otherwise would get into that system, and you would have to get in and maintain it. Now you just go in, once a month, depending on how much builds up, and you vacuum it out.
Right.
So it locates the maintenance at a central spot, and you just have a vac truck that goes back in. So we were learning so much more about how to do these right, and so I think that's right, just looking at and actually, when you get into the resilience goal, thinking of resilience.
Yeah.
Is where we're talking about,
Trying to find like model ordinances that
Thank
have
you.
been passed in other areas that address things like that. So how did they look at reducing their stormwater quantity? Maybe they looked at a different intensity of development that was allowed for impervious surface. Anything like that that can then help guide what your decisions will be even.
Like
So,
in Lynn Haven, we increased our guidelines for building from a 25-year storm to a 100-year storm.
yeah.
Our frequency of 25-year storms is way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great example, just,
Mhm.
Learning from the past, and say,
Yeah.
okay, we don't wanna keep, we wanna learn from what we did in the past, instead of just keep.
Right.
I think we can move to natural resources and species conservation. So again, same setup, you've got the summary, which is the white boxes are what y'all are approving to move forward to the public, and then the back has all the details. And then last time, we looked at some of this, there were some comments about invasive species, and those were worked into, try and remind me.
They are worked into, goal 3, action 2. And then also, we didn't have room on this list, but in goal 1, action.
Goal 1, action 3 is just trying to understand what we've got so we can manage for what it is, and then also monitoring, invasive species. And then the support efforts to manage invasive species. There's a lot that goes on, so we would just kind of be aware, support it when available, but not something that we would go in and start a program for. That's how that got incorporated.
Just the invasive species is a great example of that, and I forget what the grass is called, but the invasive grass. So bad.
Kogan grass,
Cody grass, so, what they
Phragmites,
figured
or
out was-
Hydrilla, there's a few out there.
Well, yeah, but, there's areas where they just gave up. There's like so much Kogan grass that they said any effort to try to go in and get control of it is just, and it's over in Mississippi, if I remember right, is like the worst area. And so they draw this circle and say, we're not gonna win the battle here, and so they focus the efforts on it expanding further. But one of the key things they figured out, the way it was getting spread, was through like road maintenance equipment. Mowing them, and then the mowers would just go to the next site that may not have the Kogan grass, because they just got through mowing Kogan grass, it put seeds in there.
Wow.
So it's BMPs like that where you start to learn how these spread and the control techniques. And so it's really important, given local governments, getting that information and then updating your road maintenance folks to figure that out. Going into an area where there's invasive species, either wash out or make sure that your equipment's clean, before you go to a spot that doesn't have it.
That's actually a big concern we have in St. Joe as they develop the port, is ballast water introduction.
Yep.
That's a huge method of invasive species introduction the Great Lakes can attest to, and as they talk about expanding St. Joe, or like where are they gonna discharge like ballast, either in the bay, in the deep water, or out the bay, there's no, it's a big concern.
They think that's how the lionfish really go.
That, you know, that's exactly right, so there's definitely some concern as they continue to try to expand the
So,
port.
We're addressing the invasive species here, but how about species like the sea urchin that has just exploded? Would that also fall in this?
It wouldn't, I mean, I guess,
Or could we include it in this area? Because this is the first I've heard of the sea urchins being
I mean, it would really fall under restore and conserve seagrass in the bays. It's just one of the means that would be addressed in St. Joe Bay in particular. You know, we don't need sea urchin roundups here in St. Andrew Bay, but St. Joe Bay. So I think it could probably fall under there, supporting existing efforts for
That's not invasive though, right?
No.
It's not
The
invasive.
problem is the number,
overabundance,
so
yeah.
it would be.
Right, it's an explosion of
Correct.
that.
Right, and-
Something that's normally contained that's no longer contained.
Right.
So it becomes like an invasive.
Yeah, it has the same impact.
Same impact or worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely fall under that goal 1.3, I think, in terms of understanding species diversity and just understanding how it behaves. Because right now, that's kind of where we're at. We don't know what to do, and we don't want to just go out and kill because if you kill that, you're going to kill a bunch of other things.
Right.
Or there's the public perception is we don't just want to go out and kill a bunch of stuff that's supposed to be there. So, you know, supporting collection of data, you know, it's like, how often do these blooms happen? Like, is there actually a cycle? You know, what eats them? Like that sort of thing. Figuring out sort of that,
Yeah.
like that's sort of the starting off point. So improving knowledge on the diversity of the sea.
What actually eats those things is like sea turtles
Right.
and
Some other places, right?
fish. But we don't have fish here.
Exactly. Other species, yeah, they eat other urchins. Unfortunately, nothing eats these things.
Right. And
I
not
wish
in great
things
numbers.
that. And you can only harvest 5 a day. So like recreationally, people ask when we hold these events, can you harvest and eat them? Everybody sees it on Food Network, right? You can. Well, that's a different species. It comes from the Pacific a lot of the time, or other places where it's a bigger urchin, you get, you know, bigger guts. These things are that big, and you can only get 5 a day.
What?
Yeah. We looked it up one time. Complain to FW. Well, so that would be something too, is if, you know, to work with, like, say, FWC who manages the fisheries, to be like, hey, we know this is a problem.
Right.
Can we increase the bag limit and maybe,
Or just in that bay. I mean,
right, you know,
that
do,
for Scala.
right, exactly, like adjust the season. So that would be the next thing. So that actually sort of falls under goal 3 and like 2, I guess, even to support BMPs, like,
Yeah.
so, and that could be working with your local or state or even federal governments.
The only thing I could see that really killed the sea urchins was when Opal came through, and it killed everything. Because the fresh water, well, the bay became fresh water.
Right.
And it killed all the urchins, all the scallops, all the oysters. The only thing survived, I think, were the crabs.
Very cold temperatures, supposedly killed them too. Unfortunately, we only had really that one cold week in December where temperatures we got down into single digits in the south end of St. Joe Bay. So really cold, and in that case, you tend to see them floating on the surface, but we didn't see any floating urchins.
Nothing
so-
big, yeah.
Not this time.
Killed all my orange trees.
Right, I mean, killed everything else, your mangroves got damaged, everything else, but the urchins are just still out there, just marching along.
Any comments on the actions for natural resources and species conservation? Okay.
Wanted to back up.
Mhm.
I've just been looking through this.
That's fine.
I'm looking for a place, because I'm looking at action items, and I know we've spoken about a lot of them. I'm looking for the proper place to insert. Now, there's several different places I can see, I can put it. And the reason I know that we're talking about 6,000 foot level and all like that, but when this gets to the public, and the public looks at action items, and they don't see that on here anywhere, they're gonna wonder why I didn't put it on here.
Right.
And not I didn't put it on here, I'm sorry, why? I didn't bring it up for discussion for us to put it on here. And, so I think under some of these bullet points that we have on the back page, these bullet points are there for suggested action items? Is that right?
No, they are context for the action items, so they're the, like, activities.
Activities.
Yeah.
Well, that's an activity that we're trying to move forward as open meal fast. I wanna see it on here somewhere.
Okay.
I want those words on here.
goal two would be ideal place.
Goal 2, increase
Yeah.
public awareness and importance of high quality, that's a good spot for it.
And that gets water flowing is the main idea, and that
Yeah.
quality. It'd be nice if it was a goal all in itself, because the whole area supports opening that pass and to clean that portion of the bay.
I hear both sides, so I can't
Oh, you do?
agree
Okay.
with the whole area, so.
Yeah, so I don't know if I
think-
could go with the whole area either, but
Yeah.
there is a big public interest in
Yeah,
opening,
there's a
for
lot of
sure.
interest in this, and I would say the majority of the people in Bay County that have spoken to me are very interested in seeing it done. And that's why the county has such an effort going forward with it.
Mhm.
And so,
And the state, I think.
if we could, I think you're right, Mayor, under goal 2 would be a good spot. Whether we put that as a bullet point or actually as a heading itself, at least a bullet point would be very minimum, I think. What do y'all think?
If you're gonna put it in there, there needs to be a caveat, based on science and understanding and, factual. Just because people want it open doesn't mean it's the best. I know that there's been one study that's come out of the feasibility study, or one part, but there's still a lot of the other parts that are still being published and proven. So it's kind of hard, I guess, from the government side or the scientist side to get fully on board with that right now. Like, I've looked at what's, come out so far, but, there's a lot of impacts to, what actually might happen, and models aren't always correct, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of pushback, based on models. There's a lot of analysis that goes into, and so on and so forth. So it's just, in my mind, it's difficult to make that a specific thing. I understand what you guys are saying, that there is a big interest, and I totally agree. It's just, to make that its own goal, I don't know if that would be right, or, like I said, the way you're gonna word it just needs to be, stated that it's gonna be based on, science and the studies and all this stuff, scientific fact.
Yeah, I mean, and it all boils down to what the state allows anyway.
Correct.
They base it all on DEP, short.
Right, in the core.
Base everything on their scientific, data. And, there's a firm right now putting all that together.
Right, I know, yeah,
And so,
agreed.
out of all this effort, I'd hate to walk away with it without even mentioning it on here.
So, one thing that I think that this policy board needs to think about is the way that I look at the old paths and the outfalls on the beach, and really any project, even septic to sewer, is it's a project level. So what really is the goal for opening the old paths? It's not necessarily opening the old paths, it's to increase the hydrologic
Yeah, right.
of the bay. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I would consider putting the language, is a little bit broader, because that can help with the dam, that can help with a lot of other things that can address it.
Yeah.
Because if we start putting 1 or 2 projects in here that do have some controversy behind that I hear about, then the program may be looked at as not neutral. And it's very important for this program to be a neutral entity that provides that science to support, or really to support your decisions, whatever those decisions are. And so I think that's kind of how I tend to think about the old paths, is it's more on the hydrologic side, the benefits hydrologically to the bay that could amount to all of these other things. If we want increased seagrass, the path could help that. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about the path, is it could be supported through some of the goals that are already identified. because it's a project.
So we get more towards the activity level, it'll be.
I think it's more
feasible?
towards the activity level, but I also think it's more of a hydrologic integrity of the bay, I guess, or something like that.
Well, it's not so much hydrologic, it's the improvement of the flushing action of the bay, and you could say it.
Right.
Yeah, you could say it's hydrologic, but,
Something else too is, like, it would make another access point in and out of the bay system. I know a lot of people have expressed interest in that, is that it would create a new access point, or,
yeah, but we're not
return
approaching it that way, we're approaching it through scientific data.
Yeah.
And scientific data tells us that increasing the flushing action in the bay would increase the seagrass and increase the scallops, and improve the living conditions of the scallops and all. So everything we do, we're gonna approach this in a scientific way, not in whether it's good or not for the voters.
no, I do know that is a big interest though in a lot of the local groups, so that's all I was saying.
Benefit.
No, but I mean, that's just under the stewardship, is to increase
That being
access
said,
and that sort of thing.
You might can answer this, or you, would that, opening the old path, would that decrease the flow of
That's what the
safety,
hydrologic model
or safety-wise?
That's what a lot of what just came out showed. I know it did show that there was some decent dissolution of things coming into the water. I don't recall specifically what it said about how it's gonna impact the main inlet or
Yeah,
anything.
I don't think they addressed that.
I'm not sure.
I've been out there in my boat in the past now.
Pretty swift. Yeah.
I mean, 10, 11 knots.
Oh, I know.
I'm moving.
I mean, I've been out there when it's like 9-foot seas out there, and then it's two out of nowhere, and it's just, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, nice and
flat in the Gulf, and you hit, Yeah.
You hit that, and you're going, whoa, you know, and you're zipping through there with no
Yeah.
power, engine shut off, and I just like to see what it was
Yeah.
doing.
So I'm thinking-
I'm like, whoa.
So, before you say anything.
Okay.
So, a lot of what you guys were just saying is actually in a lot of these goals.
Right.
And so it's, yes, it will increase access, even though you may not approach that particular project, it has that component. It will help, as science says, it's going to help the seagrass, the scallops, those are addressed in a lot of the goals. So you would basically, the way I look at the kind of project level things is, if I want to restore crop scars, I'm gonna say, well, in my action plan, it says this is a goal, and this is a goal, and this is a goal, and that's my justification.
Right.
Not necessarily that it says specifically to use sediment tubes
So
as
the
a
outcomes
restoration.
the outcomes you're looking
Yeah.
for are in here,
Right.
but without it being tied to specific projects.
Right.
It's not, this isn't a project list, but it is the outcomes, and the outcomes of that. You identified water quality as a place that would go. Well, if that's what the hydrology in your study reveals, it may be, but right now, you're saying the outcomes are here without having to go to a specific project.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I'm putting out there for consideration.
I mean, something you can consider too is that there's gonna be a lot of background information and, extra meat in this document. It's not just gonna be these goals, so that'll give you opportunity to expand and even have a whole section, dedicated to like the East Pass. For instance, in DEP's management plan, we have all sorts of different sections, and then our goals are listed out, when related to that, but it explains what our programs are, what they're working towards. So for instance, if you had like a whole big, chapter even about it, or like a history of it, how it naturally closed, what's been done to date, that sort of thing, and then, lead into which goals and things it could be into. I think that might be a good way to do it, because then you're not tied to specific goals, and you can really explain what you're working towards.
One thing it does is cut off the land connection between wild animals that come over that eat turtle eggs and turtles.
They still find a way across.
And, they won't, unless they can swim and swim back.
We have that problem in Appalachia with coyotes and raccoons. They-
Well, okay, let's not call wildlife a problem, because.
But what I mean, we're trying to.
Right, we're trying to protect the turtle nest and
so forth.
the
It's a
shorebird.
lot easier to protect them with the pass there than without the pass.
But, then there's also the other side. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but then by cutting a path there, you're disturbing existing shorebird nesting area.
Well, that's brand new, and
But-
it wasn't there forever, because it just closed up in the
Early 2000s.
early 2000s. Because I used to drive all the way around that thing, And that means it was open from 1936, when they cut the new pass. And it was open all that time, which is almost 60 years,
Right.
60-some years, before it closed in. And they should have taken action before, but they didn't.
Daryl, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanna throw out that I don't know that it would fit under the water quality. What I would recommend is adding something under natural resource species conservation, functioning ecosystems that support resilient communities and wildlife. To me, that is where we're trying to get. The analysis is an effort to improve the health of the bay, is what it's sounding like, in this whole conversation we just had. What we don't have in any of the goals currently, the one that's closest to it, I think, is the wetlands, the goal 4, but that's not, what I'm saying is, do we need to add a goal, or maybe reword one to talk about because we have ecosystems, but we haven't defined it at like the bay level. At the
Okay, so restore and sustain ecosystems.
Right.
Support function.
Right, and then maybe we,
Okay.
I'm just saying, I think that's where the conversation has been, is
This has come up a little bit before
Kinda like
too,
the
where
goal
that goal 4 was restrictive because it only had wetlands, so it might be something where we need to go back to the STEM and talk about broadening that language.
Use scientific all you want, because it really is. That bay is now stagnant. There's a lot of, it's become a shark nursery, which is, kind of odd. We had that in Hawaii, but it made the bay almost unusable for swimmers and so forth, because we're talking hammerheads and stuff like that over there. And a hammerhead is a man-eater.
Yeah.
then make it more broad. That's what I'm hearing, is the way the health.
Yeah, we want it back to normal.
Right.
And I think in the long run, it will not only make the bay healthier, but it may eliminate all this red tide stuff that I don't think we really had before.
Are y'all feeling?
There's some, few spots have had background levels lately, but nothing too bad around here. At least this time of year.
On the south end of Florida, but.
But I mean, there's been a few blips here and there that have popped up, but I mean, nothing of any concern, like background level.
Right, 'cause we've had, I've been here since '67, and we used to have, I didn't know red tide, I just knew my eyes was burning and my nose was burning, and
Right.
we were out swimming, and,
That was probably right before Michael. It was 2018, right
oh
before
no,
Michael.
this is when I was.
Oh.
Even right after
Right
Michael.
before Michael.
Say right after
it
Michael,
was
we had
bad.
some long red tide too. Yep. And,
I can still remember
2021
saying
maybe?
how pungent that, and then I was reminded when I was in St. Pete a couple years ago.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Florida,
yeah, I remember that smell.
Tampa Bay's real bad.
I'm gonna try to get us back on track, but it was 20 minutes and still a lot to do.
Cool.
Did some of that conversation, Bill, address what you were looking for? If we don't name it specifically, but talk about it more in or about,
Something with the terminology, improving improving or increasing the exchange of fresh seawater into the bay.
Improve like the hydrodynamics of the bay.
That I thought was in here someplace.
I think that's what I was gonna say.
it was.
There was a freshwater
In-
flow.
In goal 5, it says identify hydraulic alterations throughout the watershed to impact.
We have a lot of freshwater flow, there's saltwater flow.
Right.
Talking about increasing
Right.
the saltwater
Right.
flushing action.
Okay, well, we'll take that back to the STEM committee and get some different language, and we'll probably email you all what that language is so that it can go out to the public and you guys approve whatever that is.
In the political realm, and I'll address the elephant in the room, normal citizen, voter / resident, they want to see open the pass. It affects you.
Yeah,
all
well, I mean, I
the
agree.
political guys and gals in here.
I agree.
That's the bottom line. But if we have to put it, what he said was perfect, that was great. Throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
people on the
that's why-
beach wanna see, well, we're gonna open up the pass, we're gonna open up the pass.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, call Bill.
Well,
That's why I made the statement I made, you know, with this document.
Right, I know.
When it's
I know
final,
why you made it.
somewhere on here, we need that language to say.
Open pass.
Open the pass.
Open order.
Or so many activities should lead to that.
Right.
That,
I
something,
think,
it'd be
yeah.
nice to mention it in here and go ahead and get
So you get
controversy out of the
people-
way. But you know, do it
So
scientifically.
I can speak to the study that I saw being presented, and I know there's a lot more underneath it, I hope there's a lot more underneath it, I guess I should say, but there's still a lot of scientific questions to be answered before I could say like, yes, that is scientifically.
Were there even
supported.
questions before the pass closed? I mean, when the pass was
No, I
open, we
think-
had a nice flushing of that area.
Well,
But what benefits do we have with it closed?
why couldn't you take the gold title on the side?
I mean, I know it doesn't say open the pass.
Yeah, freshwater / saltwater
Yeah,
improvements in the
Right.
bay.
Maintain a balance,
Yeah.
freshwater and saltwater.
Saltwater.
yeah.
Right, and that would cover everything. Bill?
I mean, we could say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you'll hear that conversation, his suggestion was if you look at goal 5, under water settlement quality, that side, if you look at number 5, the goal itself,
Mhm.
restore and maintain balanced freshwater and saltwater input.
Okay.
And then under the fourth bullet, we have identify hydraulic alterations throughout the watershed, and then that language can be tightened up,
Yeah.
And just add
saltwater, freshwater / saltwater balance.
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah.
Whatever.
I was trying to convince them to put it into
No, I think-
Kept looking for it.
four, but yeah, I think that'd be easier to change than the whole letter.
I agree.
And I don't know what's under resilience, I haven't put that page in, 'cause that could even fall under there technically.
Yeah.
It's to improve water over time and flow over time and things over time.
Yeah.
She's tight on time.
All right.
I know, right?
Let's move to resiliency. Any comments on resiliency? Oh, go ahead.
One more. So right where you were talking about, we're gonna implement and saltwater,
Uh-huh.
and then go down to number 1, access and maintain, restore freshwater and saltwater dynamics in the bay. No, that doesn't make sense.
AKA open the pass.
I
can't let it bail out, all right?
Restore freshwater, yeah, it does.
You could do freshwater / saltwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works in there, it
Freshwater,
does, yeah.
saltwater balance.
Fresh / saltwater.
So, yeah, let's do that,
Okay.
yeah.
Simple.
Resiliency.
Simple.
All right, on to resiliency.
You're right.
Yeah.
Keeping us moving, keeping us moving.
Look at the resiliency, and again, you've got those with the actions on one page and the detailed or illustrative set of activities under the action on the other page to help,
Yes.
clarify what is included in those actions. Smaller set of actions, hopefully.
Number 2, goal 1, part 2,
Mhm.
new local government existing. We have, and I know we have some homewater, we could, that we can, somebody from every county or something, or
Yes, we have a
Contact or-
yeah, we have a stormwater working group, that meets quarterly, and so we've got, yes, Chris is on it. Who's the one municipality, there was one that we didn't have, was it Bay County? Or City of Panama City Beach, it was one of the big
Well,
ones.
it was, we
No,
have.
we have city of TCB, we have Panama City, I think it's Bay,
Okay.
King County, that we're
Okay.
missing.
And we've only had one call.
Right.
So we'll have another one scheduled, but we had, I think everyone else was on.
It needs to be inclusive of everybody in the region, because it's
Yeah,
a regional issue,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
You're gonna solve it on a regional basis, not
Yeah.
piecemeal. Any thoughts on any of the other ones?
think, working with FEMA, they've got a plan and maps already. Need to be added in there somewhere along with, municipalities,
Okay.
'cause they've got a, it's called FEMA, future stormwater.
They do have, graphing modeling that you can go online and view, and it predicts up to the next 100 years.
Take advantage of their work and incorporate.
Right, and they got some guidance already in mapping and,
We need
Are these new flood zone mapping?
No, we're not talking about the flood zone mapping, it's, encroachment, isn't it the sea level encroachment? Yes, yes.
Okay.
That's-
Yeah, actually, DEP's been developing one too within our division too, like a sea level vulnerability tool.
Yeah.
It's been used out of our resilience program, so that's just an addition. So
Sure.
that may fall under, I don't know,
To make sure that gets captured in the activities,
yeah,
under that action.
right.
just utilizing what's out there, exactly, like, that gets said a lot, don't reinvent the wheel, just,
Right.
Yeah.
there's a lot of great stuff out there, a lot of things to build off of,
And they send a guy around to
yeah.
tell you how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Okay.
Anything else on any of the other resiliencies?
Okay, so I've got to give you context for stewardship. So Community Action Committee went through a different planning, different prioritization, I should say. So they did more of a high impact, high effort, low impact, low effort, with this sort of grid approach. And they wanted things to fall sort of into this sweet spot here. I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see
your
that now.
top left quadrant
This one
would be
here.
ideal, because that would mean has the highest impact with the least amount of effort.
But although they were given this graphic to use as a map, I don't think many of them paid attention to that yes right here. And so we had a lot fall in here, as you can see. As you can see, we had a big cluster. So,
So a lot of high impacts, but maybe a lot of effort to make.
and I do believe some of that was also because we lumped a lot of activities together, so they were looking at all these activities of like, man, that's gonna take forever, that's a lot of effort, and then they would put it into the high effort. So staff had to go kind of back to taking this input and finessing it into what you have today, which is on this worksheet that you have. So this is what it kind of boiled down to. We ended up with 3 actions in the first one and then 2 in the second 2. And remember, goal 3, this is the language that you're also looking at because you didn't see that language prior.
And you're increasing the access was incorporated here because of the access and engagement with the bay is where you're gonna be able to promote the stewardship.
Well, this isn't just bay access, remember, this is watershed access.
I meant,
Yes.
yes, thank
Yes. The public access to the resources, you have to see it to appreciate it. So the more that we can get them out there, the more they'll care, hopefully, and, reduce their impact.
As you just said here in one of the actions, that fosters recreation.
Mhm.
I'll just throw out that not having high level of effort is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
I wouldn't want that to put a certain action, out of consideration or lower importance because things are worth the effort. So-
Well, in some things, you need to put a little more effort into it first to get the ball rolling,
Right.
and then it becomes less effort over time because it's just part of your program, so, I don't know how that would get captured in the 4-box thing, that might be a couple
Right.
other boxes down the way, like,
Right.
another, like, crossover somewhere, another hybrid.
Questions about any of those? I guess there are 7 total
Well,
actions
and
in that.
to Daryl's point, and Brittany reminded me, like, we didn't lose any of those, high efforts. I really think it was because we had put so many bullets that they looked at it and was like, that's a lot.
We're all goal free, would Rhea work in there?
Increasing recreational opportunities in public access.
Yeah.
They did quite a bit of studies and, mapping and all that for the whole complete panhandle, not just the watershed, so
Yep.
Rhea might be a good place to go for some information.
You know, would apply even to both actions under that.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments on those actions? Or on the goal language?
Well, and also, Mayor, that's the goal too, to promote stewardship of natural resource and community engagement. I mean, when we get done with that project, those communities will have access to those water bodies, and I think would hopefully result in better appreciation and, so.
But we could reach out and get some of their studies for the committee, that'd be fantastic.
Slide in for y'all. Only for Bill. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. It was just in my slide deck, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna keep that in there.
I'm so glad you got that one.
We had a long discussion about that early on.
Oh, yes, first meeting, I remember that was my take-home message.
I'll remind you, even before Jeff showed up, we told you that this was gonna be a planning exercise, but you were doing this faster than anybody else has done.
Yes, we
You're
are.
getting there a lot faster.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's stewardship or resiliency, but what about, our water table and, the fact that we need more trees, more planting of trees in this area?
That is, I believe in resiliency, it's in there somewhere.
That might be just under nature-based solutions, maybe.
I don't think we have room for a bullet specifically on planting trees, but,
It's in there,
Yeah.
for sure.
but I think also those
Increasing-
tree giveaways and stuff that
Right.
could fall under there.
I think it's one of those like parentheses things in our.
Yeah, I just thought it would be stewardship because of the tree giveaways.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I probably should have showed you all this first, but, this is an example action plan that Ryan put together. So you guys just looked at the actions. That's this up here. Every action that you just looked at is gonna have one of these action plans. So it will have what the goal it's addressing, what we're doing, why we're doing it, all the background. And then on the back, it has those activities, those are the bullet points. And then it'll have what our progress, how are we measuring our progress? So every single one of those numbered things that you looked at today will be one of these. So it'll have more details to it, even more than you saw today.
This would be a good place, again, like per, action item, this is where in the background you could be, part of this effort would be to determine if reopening, like the East Pass is the right decision, or something along those lines, you know what I'm saying? But that's where you could have a bigger history of it in the meat of the document, but then per each one of these, it gives you the opportunity to really, give that finite goal. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those are your opportunities. It'd be like, this is part of this one, this is part of this one. Just kind of drop it in a sentence in there, just kind of throw it out there all the time. I think that might be a good way to do it is you have the background and then this is, being used, or this action will help, determine this, or will lead into this, or.
Right, these action plans are just one section of the CCMP. The other sections, I think section 6 or 7. So all the other sections, there's a timeline, there's background, there's all sorts of fun stuff that will be in it, but this is really where rubber meets the road, are these action plans. It will probably look different, but it's a good example of kind of a.
Good start.
Yeah.
Potential for.
Yeah, I was saying it's a good thing for a
We'll
public
hire
meeting.
someone to figure all that
Have
out.
that
Okay, so activities, this is in your packet, I won't go through a lot of this, it basically just is showing you kind of where we're gonna have these workshops. Management Council Policy Board, you guys are meeting every other month in the same month. So like you saw, a lot of things are coming out hot off the presses, and then we'll go back to the committees, and they will meet, next month. STEM's meeting tomorrow, and so this is an iterative process. So because of time, I think I'm actually gonna power through it.
We need to vote on.
Do you
Oh.
need a formal approval
Yeah,
of the,
you're right.
the actions as presented and discussed by you? I guess we need y'all to approve allowing staff to go ahead and bring that to the public, workshops on the 7th and 8th of March.
I'll make a motion.
A motion? Second. Motion and second, all in favor? Aye.
And again, it's an iterative process. These aren't set in stone by any means. You're gonna get their input, bring it back to you. You'll get to say, hey, what did they think?
Yeah,
Maybe that's the big issue they raised.
yeah.
Sure.
That strengthens that.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip the funding outlook. I really wanted to do the funding outlook to get you guys aware. Basically, our funding's gonna run out in June of 2024. So we need to start getting more money in the door to keep us more sustainable in the future. So just be thinking of that.
Do we have, action plan for that?
For funding, so we'll have a finance strategy in the CCNP, and then there'll be an outreach strategy as well as these action plans, but not necessarily an action plan, but,
You saying you want paid?
I want money. I want to stay paid.
You need to have that conversation after you show them the grant proposal successes.
Yes, well, and a lot of you guys have seen this, but we do have some new money coming in the door. We have 1.6 million of research, 13,000 to do a seagrass nursery, and 200,000 to do another research project. So we have gotten some more money. That new money is actually, we've applied for 8.7 million over the past, since I've been here, a year basically. But that money keeps us now funded basically through that June fully. So on February 2024, both Ryan and I actually go to halftime. But because we got that new money in, now we're fully funded through that June deadline. So that's where that's at. So this will be a more robust conversation at our next meeting because grants take time, allocations take time. This is the time we need to make sure that we're not being relaxed. We applied for 8.7 million. We only got, I think it's 2.6 of that 8.7. We might get another 500,000 if NIPWA says yes. But you put a lot out there, you only get little back.
And even if you get 2.6 million in, that's not to support staff.
Right, that's for
to
projects.
a project.
Yeah.
There may be an element of staff support for that project.
Right. So where we're at is we basically need $300,000 more to fund us fully through March of 2025. And that's a really rough estimate. FSU did not help me with that calculation, so I'll just put that in there with the caveat. But we're doing okay. I'm not worried yet, but it's now time to think about it so we don't get worried. That's my brief, synopsis. We have public input workshops March 6th and 7th. The one for Bay County is on the 6th. It will be at the Destination Panama City meeting. There's some flyers up there if you'd like to take one with you. And the Gulf County one will be at the Port Inn Event Hall at 4:30 Central Time, 5:30 Eastern. We will be hiring for that $1.6 million grant this spring into the summer. Our next meeting for this group will be April 26th, 1 to 3, and you will be looking at more of these draft action plans at that point. So that one pager that I showed you.
Mayor, you did see your project, you did?
I told them.
And then also, I don't know if anybody's been here from, Port St. Joe, but you have a call tomorrow or next week, for a H&H hydrologic study for Port St. Joe to understand the dynamics there so that they can put in some stormwater solutions. So there are 2 other grants that.
Still part of that NERDA stormwater thing that was
Well,
from a while ago, or?
Yes and no. So there's been several grants that TNC and University of Florida have got for Fort St. Joe.
Mhm.
What is needed is to understand the dynamics, and so we put that in for or actually Jeff's work did it, put in money for NOAA to do the H&H study, and that is, we got a call to have questions, which usually is a good sign. So if that comes through with the grants that are already there and that study, then they will be designing and identifying solutions, which will then be funded by the NERD money.
Wait,
It's together.
super clear.
Just briefly touch, I know you didn't want to touch on the funding, but there are programs all over the country, I mean, how are they funded? I mean, what?
There's a lot of differences. So national estuary programs are funded administratively through EPA. They get an annual amount of money.
So there's a federal pot.
There's a federal pot of money, but they have to match that amount of money that comes through with local money. So there's contributions that come from most of the municipalities that are involved with the estuary program to match that large amount of money that comes in. They also get grants to do a lot of their projects. So, you know, we're not far away from it, but we don't have that
You're
federal
modeled
pot.
on this national estuary program, but you are not a national estuary
Right.
program. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have that
Maybe
federal pot.
a future thing, you gotta have BCMP, you gotta have the structure. That's why you have the structure you have, in part, is to try and model that with the idea that.
Which, on that note, there was a Restore America's Estuaries conference months ago,
December.
and, there was a panel on the Panhandle Estuary programs, and EPA's top leadership of the National Estuary Program, was in attendance. And there was some conversations afterward about how, I wasn't there, but
They liked us.
they loved it. And so,
So we need to push forward.
yeah, because it basically, they recognize there's not been a new NEP program designated since the late eighties or early nineties.
90s.
And so, and with them seeing the success of these programs, they said, we really need to get this going. So,
And they're working right now with Principal Perdido, who's, you know, 4 years ahead of us, basically. And, you know, Rubio supported putting them back into something.
he filed legislation this session to have them designated,
As a
So-
national estuary program.
which will cut the teeth of getting new ones going again. So you're really in a good position, being how far that y'all have come in this time frame and being able to show and document that, so that once EPA says, okay, we're gonna start designating again, you know, people that have been here doing the work are gonna be able to be first in
And
line.
One of
And
the-
really what that does is that they're giving Pensacola Perdido the process that they have to take in order to get one. So they are now creating it for them,
That's like
that
that.
we will be able to use, to be like, look what we did.
And
But
one of the things they'll be looking for is the model you've set up and local support.
local
Yeah.
support.
Do you have the regional, is the region supporting this effort?
Yes.
So, or the public outreach that you're planning has to
The public outreach to
public
local
involvement
government.
funding too, right?
Yes, yeah.
We're not doing this without everyone's help, right?
Right, absolutely. So it all comes together. One last thing, last time, I think, Bill, it was you who asked for kind of a project list so that you could communicate with the community. I put together 2 versions, so this is one version, which just gives you kind of the project type, the title, and then the money about it, and then how it's relating to our current CCMP.
Okay.
The other version I gave you in your packet is this prettier version of a one project profile. I didn't know which one you wanted. So I did 2, but this grant, these 2 grant pages.
And they're in your packet.
Yeah, they're in your packets. The green we got funded, the red we didn't, but it
2-3
gives you an
pages in your
idea of
packet.
what we've submitted. So you think about it, I'll follow up with you, and you can let me know kind of what you were looking for.
Bill's in the purdy.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I know we're over time. I really appreciate you sticking in there with me. I will move the stuff we didn't cover today to the next meeting. Benefit of frequent meetings.
And if we're up to the coastal communities, so proposals will do, Keep going.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone online.
To all the committees, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, they put in a lot of time on
They
this.
are.
yes,
They really have.
they're amazing.
Good job, by the way, guys.
I got to get up.
It's coming together. We're almost down on the flow chart.
I'm the fastest, tallest chair in the
I'll
building.
give you one of these, in case you ever.
This is the sheriff or,
I'll do it now, after I.
Good
job.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Why don't I do you this?